I'm going to apologize for the fan running in the background. I live in South Texas. This is my garage. It's not climate controlled. It's hot. So that's what's going on there. What's going on in front of you though is Echo CS-620. This is one I'm doing for a buddy. I ported it once before. I wasn't happy with the way it was set up, so picked up a new cylinder and I'm gonna go at it a different direction. These things, when you cut the base, they pretty much land at 81 on the intake, 80, 81. I hadn't timed this untouched cylinder to see where the exhaust lands stock, but my goal here, or what I'm going to try and do, is uh, 80 on the intake, 121 or 122 on the primary, 124 on the secondary, and 104 on the exhaust. I'm going to shoot for 65 or 70% of the bore width on the exhaust. That's why I grabbed a 590 piston, because I don't have any pesky second pin over here on the on a piston, so I'm not worried about clipping a ring, because that one stays well above the intake port, and I'm probably not going to go so flat on the exhaust anyway that it cause an issue. But that's the current plan. The whole reason I'm doing this again is, let me find y'all a pointer and I'll start poking around in the cylinder. I don't mess with the intakes typically. You know, the intake on these things I think is fine. My big problem was particularly on this primary. I blew through this corner a little bit and it causes all kinds of problems with the way that directs the fuel and air charge. So, you know, my buddy's not paying me, again for this. So I picked up the cylinder and I said, you know what, just let me fix it, because I'd rather have good quality work out there than something that's kind of half done. The transfers ain't totally even, which, you know, on the secondaries I might not. I'm gonna run water through this one just to see where things are at. The water test just gives you an idea. It's not an end-all be-all as far as how things are going on inside of that cylinder. So take the water test with a grain of salt. It's just giving you an idea of what's happening, may not be telling you the whole story. And the other thing, this exhaust port was pretty narrow, and it was at like 102 or 101, something like that. The saws that I'm happy with have a wide exhaust and a pretty low exhaust compared to, I don't know, they're just lower than some of the numbers you hear. But that's just what I've been happy with. So, I think I'm done rambling about this. I can start timing it, and then I can start grinding on it. So y'all are going to bounce around. There's going to be skipping around in here. Another point that I needed to touch base on. I don't have a lathe, so how did I get this base machined? Most of the Echoes, at least your 4910, 501s, 590, 620, 7310s, most of those, the squish is so ridiculous you don't necessarily need to do chamber work. Some of them you have the option of it, some of them you don't. Like this one, no chamber work, you run out of piston skirt before that happens. But getting off topic, talk to local machine shop, and there's plenty of videos on how to make these mandrels. But once you tell them what you need, they'll make you a mandrel. And then they'll chuck it up in a lathe and cut the base for you. You got to pay, of course, but that's just how I'm getting by with my hobby without having to invest in a lathe. If you're only doing one of these every couple of months, doesn't make sense to have a ton of tooling involved. A lathe is a big expense. If you're trying to get into it, doing a couple of them a month, yeah, you probably should invest in a lathe. I just haven't gotten there yet, but I figured I'd share that. Here's a water test I'm talking about, which, like I said, it's not the end all be all, just kind of gives you a general idea of the direction things are flowing in one of these cylinders. Let me go grab the other one so I can show you what a messed up one looks like. Here's one that's not quite right. Now, this one flows in a direction that I kind of like, this one does not. So we'll see what's happening when we run water through there. Probably give it a little bit more. There, that's when you can see kind of that it spreads all over the chamber, and the side that's not so bad, directed pretty much straight across in a stronger stream. Secondaries are kind of doing their thing. They're directed, they have much more of an angle on them, so they're directed up toward the top of the chamber. The primaries should pretty much fire flat. We'll see what the one that I haven't messed with looks like. Yeah, straight stream, straight across the chamber, or straight across the cylinder. This one, the secondaries hit the back wall and are angled toward the combustion chamber. Hitting the back wall and angled toward the combustion chamber, firing straight across the cylinder. So that's what I'm going for on this one. I just need to be able to raise the transfer and maintain that flow characteristic. Again, it's not the end all be all of what's going on in there. Water's 1,000 times denser than air, so that's just giving you an idea. It may not be 100% correct, but it is giving you some sort of idea. And that is backed up by the wash pattern on the piston as well, at least as far as I can tell, between the cylinder that I didn't like. Here's what I was talking about. I've already kind of cleaned this piston off, but this is where I was talking about where I said the wash pattern was uneven. This side starts like way up here, and this one's pretty far back. This one's kind of behind this this arrow, and this one's starting closer to the front of it. And it's, this side's getting washed out a lot more than this one. So that's where I was saying the water chest kind of helps determine like if this is gonna happen, but it's not 100% what's going on. Anyway, I pulled the piston out on this one. I've taken the corners out in the cases. Let me find my gasket wherever I set it. Do I have any evidence that that helps? No. Does it make me feel better that I did it and that it matches the gasket? Yes, it does. So that's why I did it. I don't think it's hurting anything because it is a minimal amount of material that's being removed. But I could very well be wrong. 590 piston versus a 620 piston. If you've wondered what the difference is, pin height, pin to crown is exactly the same. Skirt to pin is exactly the same. You just have 2 rings on the 620 piston. On the 590, that this area here is a little bit thicker from the crown to the ring land. On that, this one's only got 1 ring, but that area is a little bit thicker. Does it hurt or help anything? I don't know, but it'll let you go for a wider exhaust, which can be beneficial sometimes. Here's where I'm talking about the cases match the gasket now. Nothing fancy, just a little bit of meat out of those 2 corners and it's done. Pro tip, installing these thrust washers is kind of annoying. A dab of grease helps keep them in place. And then it's just a lot of fighting and being finicky from there. Not going to worry about trying to lighten this piston any. This is a work build, not a full-blown, go all out build. Getting ready to retime, find out my numbers. I put the 590 piston in there. I installed it on the rod. Already have both circlips in, so I'm gonna have to get rid of that one because it's gonna drive me insane. If I see it, I'm gonna panic and think that this thing is gonna blow up. Numbers before port work. I got the squish down 24 thousandths. Intake lands at 80, gives me 160 degrees of duration. Primary is 127, secondary is 129, exhaust is 106. Gonna try for 104, 124, and 122. That should give me 42 degrees before those fire, allowing for a little bit of case compression, and then just a slight edge where that one's going to fire first, because as soon as if these open at the same time, I think the secondary feeds harder just from the angle that the port is at, and this is also a smaller port, so I want to give it time to put some mix out. And then that would, taking the exhaust to 104 would bring my exhaust duration to, let's see, 76, 172? No. 152. Or 154. Dang it. 74 times 2 is 150. Dang it, I can't do math right now. It's after it's 9. It's after 9 o'clock. I can't do math after 9 o'clock. 160 minus 12, 148. No. Hold on. if I take the exhaust to 104, it'll give me 152 degrees of exhaust duration. Like I said, I can't do mental math after about 5 or 6 o'clock, so I don't even try. I put it on paper, then don't make dumb mistakes. But that's where I'm reading everything. Let me try and get the cylinder line squared away, and then I'll start grinding on this. Here's the next part of, I don't know if it helps, but it makes me feel better. I matched these corners to the gasket so there's no obstruction. I didn't really waller out the lowers any. I just tapered the corners in that were kind of in the way. Now I'm kind of scribbled in there. That's just a rough outline of about how far I need to take that exhaust out. My ports, to time them the way that I think, pretty much just have to take the primary to the edge of its bevel, and then put a new bevel in there, and I think it's going to time where I want it to. Same with the secondary, but I may not mess with that one quite as much. It does need to come up, but I'll probably just take it to the top of the black line, and then the primary I'll take through the black line. Exhaust lines up pretty much same as the primary does. I timed it when I was sticking the ring in there. It's about 3 degrees between where the port lands and where your ring lands because of the taper on the piston. So if you're trying to hit 104 exhaust, you need to time it like that. When you have the ring in there, you need to time it at like 107, and that's going to land you at 104. I think Dino Joe said that in one of his videos, and I just double checked to verify, and that seems to be accurate. Here's another one I'm starting to do. Sandpaper on top of the piston, and then run it to clean up the chamber, just to make sure there aren't any high spots. That one looks pretty good. I'll go to a finer grit, and then that'll basically put a polish in there and call it good. I'm pretty close to roughed in over here. I have to straighten out that secondary. Primary is alright. I need to bevel everything. Again, I'm leaving the intake alone. Exhaust is kinda shaped. It needs more work. And then that secondary ain't been touched, but that primary is okay. It's like 11:30. I'm calling it a night. I'll get back on it first thing tomorrow morning. Okay, before I assemble this thing, just going to show you all the port work. I hit about 69% on the exhaust. Yeah, I was aiming for 65 to 70. Primary, that little one there, it's like 121 and some change, 122. Secondary is firing at 124. Intake landed at 80. I ran a little bit of sandpaper through the squish band just to hit any high spots, clean it up if there was any. Then we'll go to the muffler, opened it way up, and opened it up. And there's my muffler mod, 2 big holes on each side. I left that little bit right there like a bridge to kind of reduce the crackle on these things, because they get loud if you open them all the way up. And then let's see if I can show y'all how much bigger this exhaust port is compared to the last one. I know I'm all over the place with the camera, but just give me a minute. So the one that I laid it on top of is already bigger than stock. So exhaust is a whole lot wider. The exhaust landed at 103 100.5, 104, depending on how you want to read it. Here's the 620 I ported. These are just going to be a few test cuts just to kind of get it dialed in on the tune. I think it's pretty happy there. Okay, I'm back on the 620. I leaned it out a little more and it seemed to like that, so I'll show y'all.